Continuing my series of interviews with players in the industry on disruption, particularly in the media sectors, I'm really pleased to have Nick Callaghan from what was Facebook and is now Meta here with me today. Nick's the head of entertainment industry for Meta. Nick, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Simon.
Well, let's talk metaverse then. It's the word of the moment, isn't it? I think it's in the dictionary now, isn't it? Is that right?
I think it is, yeah.
So my sort of simple definition would be it's almost like another version of the internet, which is more immersive, more interoperable, overlapping between real world and call it online world. Whatever. Is that how would you kind of almost define it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, it's a big question. I mean, one thing that's clear, and our CEO and founder, Mark Zuckerberg, has come out and said this on a few occasions that no one company is going to define the metaverse. We strongly believe it will be the next major computing platform. Our belief is that the next computing platform won't sit on a small screen in our pockets. It'll be something that we immerse ourselves in, and it feels there's much more of this sense of presence that you share with people. When you're in that environment. But as I say, to be clear, we certainly don't think that one company will define or kind of own this space. It's going to be a kind of new version of the internet and the next major computing platform. And I think companies like Facebook will play, a role in it, as will, many other companies. If you think about companies, the companies behind Fortnite and Roblox right now, I think they're great examples of companies that have been really kind of successfully playing and building, their version of kind of the metaverse and a part of the metaverse for some time now. If I could get my kids off Roblox at home, I'd be doing something right, but I can't because they're just so addicted to it, to this online virtual kind of gaming. So I think, so that's it. I think in a nutshell, it's going to be it's an evolution of where we are now. So I think the belief is that, we're not going to be constantly having to look at a small screen or a certain thick screen. It's going to be something that we're going to kind of be within. And I think if you look at the pandemic now, and how that's really accelerated the way that we've all had to interact with each other, the way that we run meetings, host work, events. Often it's all being done virtually and online. And I think the metaverse is almost going to be an evolution of some of that as well, in terms of how what does the future work look like. And I know Meta, for example, are working on some of those technologies right now with things like workroom horizons, and so there's lots of interesting stuff to come. But I think and one thing to be clear on is that for me, this is a kind of 3, 5, 10 year kind of. I think there'll be significant moments, in the next 3, 5, and 10 years. It certainly won't be an overnight thing, and it's going to be a journey to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just touching on that workplace thing, because I think that's quite interesting. Yes. So is that going to facilitate? Is that going to make remote working? We're all used to remote working now, right? Is that going to make that a better experience, a more engaging experience, make collaboration more effective? Do you think?
Do you know what? I really do think it will, actually. I think clearly there's a way to go for the technology to be embraced. I mean, I don't know about you. I know we mentioned on the way up to this, to sitting down, that I've spent a lot of time working from home over the last kind of 18 months or so, and if I do another Zoom call, it'd be another one too many. Certainly it's that just notion of seeing tens of small faces on a flat 2D screen. And I have tried out some of the technology of actually hosting my own team meetings within kind of this new platform, and this notion of actually just feeling like you're sharing the same space with your team again, being able to pull up a quick virtual whiteboard if you're brainstorming and want to whiteboard an idea. You can also bring someone into, say, one of those environments who's maybe not wearing a headset, who's just literally VCing in, like as if they're coming in via a Zoom call. So you can blend both the worlds. But the key thing for me, with all this stuff, is what it does. It kind of creates, dare I say, some of that sense of presence that we all used to know and feel a bit like we are now. We're in the same space, we're sharing the same physical. When you talk to me, you're sat from my right, I hear you from my right, I turn and I see you. On Zoom or any other kind of, good VC conferencing technologies, we lose all of that because it's just a load of faces flat on the screen. And I don't think our minds are kind of designed to process meetings or events in that way. I think we're designed to share a space and be able to move from one person to another. And I think some of that technology is beginning to bring some of that back. It's never going to replace real life. Real life's always going to be the best way to do it. But I think having a blend of that, going forward, and we don't know how long work from home conditions may last. And so I think technologies that offer a blend end of that and offer you maybe a kind of an alternative to just yet another Zoom call, I think are going to be really interesting, to watch. And I think what it does after all of those meetings are done, for me anyway, it makes those interactions you have a bit more memorable, because you kind of remember, I remember that person saying that because I looked round and they were sat there in that chair and they said that thing. And again, I don't know about you, but if I'm in a long Zoom call with lots of people, I often forget what half the people have said. Maybe it's just me, but it's because I think our brains aren't designed to process kind of communication in that way.
So are you saying AI is going to help people find the best content for them and more tailored? Is that what you're saying?
I think there could be elements of that, and another area that we've looked at, for example, podcasting is obviously is on the rise again, and again we've seen since the start of the pandemic and with lockdown that people are listening to more of that type of content as well, and we've seen and heard of examples again where AI technology can even help bring some of that to life in terms of the discovery piece. So what it can do, using AI technology, you can essentially bring in an audio stream and almost bring a visual feel to that as well. So you can essentially create, a kind of character speaking, singing, whatever it may be, over the top of an audio stream from a podcast. Obviously, imagine that, being greeted by that in feed as you're scrolling through social media. Suddenly, I think that discovery of that audio content, whereas before you just relied on the sound, being able to apply visual to that using AI technology, I think is going to really kind of fire up this. Just how people find that stuff. How, obviously a lot of social media is based on very visual feeds and people scroll very fast. Being able to kind of grab attention with both the visual and the audio, which AI technology is allowing to happen, I believe is going to fuel a lot of that discovery of that kind of content going forward as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That's fascinating, actually. The other buzzword at the moment is NFTs.
Yeah.
So it seems to me, and it's something we're all trying to figure out, I think, it's another sort of way of monetizing what you've got. It almost seems to me like in the metaverse, it'd be a way of showing off something you've bought, like a unique thing you've bought or something like that. It's almost like me boring my mates with my vinyl collection or something like that. Are NFTs going to be a big part of this, do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, the work I've done today, and I know NFTs are so sort of new still and so nascent. Mine and my team's work hasn't really touched on any of that space. But I think, for me, it's an extension of what I do think is there's going to be this, this kind of notion of discovery and commerce, and I think how those two things come together. So already, if you think about discovery commerce is a thing on social media, because you think, you're scrolling through feed, you kind of see certain things, brands, products that you like, and again, if you think going back to the way that advertisers can use, catalog-based advertising to kind of back to that kind of point of, surfacing old content from kind of, SVOD services and those kind of things. I think we're seeing retailers do the same thing, surfacing more of their catalogues of products, in people's feeds. And I think we'll just see an evolution of that discovery commerce piece that plays out in the metaverse. But yes, what I do absolutely think is there will be a really interesting and big new opportunity for people, to essentially monetize and actually kind of, it feels a bit crazy, isn't it? And maybe to people like us who are, slightly older than maybe some of the people that are always using this stuff. But, I do already, I see with my own kids, they want to spend real money in places like Roblox, to buy certain updates or avatars, and it's crazy because it just feels like it's a digital avatar that you update a certain look and you have to pay for that, but it's a status thing, isn't it? I think kind of people want a bit like we've always gone out and bought certain branded trousers, trainers in the real world. Yeah. I can't see why that won't eventually just transfer to to this new kind of immersive world that we probably eventually find ourselves spending more time in. So I absolutely think there will be this new, if you like, economy that begins to be built. For again going back to all those kind of small creators, small to medium-sized creators, brands, retailers, people coming in with just digital versions of their, they already have their physical versions of their products they sell in shops. I can just see a world eventually where we'll have lots of digital versions of similar products. Obviously, certain brands won't be able to play in that space, but you can imagine many will. Certainly, if you think about fashion, entertainment, kind of high-end brands are quite aspirational. I think that's going to be a really interesting opportunity, for them to kind of, to begin to, to play in that area.
Yeah, I think you've touched on it there. So it seems like that sort of gaming and music and video is will probably lead the way in the metaverse because it's so kind of adjacent to it almost. But I think you touched on there, retail. It's going to hit everything, right? So have you got any other thoughts on other industry sectors that are going to be transformed in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Again, I almost think the list may be endless to a certain degree. I can almost see a version of more or less every sector that could be, that if they're really thought long and hard about it, they could find a way to tap into it.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting. I even read a report the other day saying how travel could actually, there's a notion of almost creating these kind of premium VIP virtual travel experiences. Obviously, I know at the moment it was a bit gimmicky, the idea of strapping on something and go, take yourself on a bit. But I've even heard of this notion of or blending the two. So actually, when somebody does go on a kind of real world travel experience, but through using technology, you can almost create these. You can offer the kind of slightly more premium kind of experience in people's minds through augmenting kind of what they're interacting with and what they're seeing. So I think even that travel, that doesn't seem like an obvious area. I think it is a sector that could eventually play in this space. But I think the ones that we Meta certainly are kind of more focused on and thinking about are those ones. Gaming and entertainment are really the two big areas, and I think the workplace. I think that going back to that, I think that's an area where there's a lot of kind of very old-fashioned, out-of-date practices that we all still do. In that sector that I think that this new technology can really help come and revolutionise. So they're the areas that we really focus on. And as I say, I think that the notion of retail and commerce is going to have a big kind of role to play. As kind of more and more people spend more and more time in those worlds. They're going to be thinking more about how they look, what they have,
virtual Air Jordans and stuff like that.
The environment that they sit in, the artwork they have behind them on the walls, and thinking about music, it's like the virtual merch you can buy at a virtual after party. I think it goes on, which is quite crazy really, but. I think it's all going to be to play for as that world gets bigger and we all spend more time in it.
Yeah, no, it's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose just to kind of close this out, you talked about sort of 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. I think what you're saying is it's not going to be a big bang. It's not going to be a pre-metaverse, post-metaverse sudden moment, right? This is going to be a progression. Is that how you see it? And how long is that going to take? Are we going to see this happening in the next couple of years or 10 years? Or how do you see it?
It's a really good question. And I'll probably be even sat in a different place now if I knew the exact answers to that. But what I would say is, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be a gradual progression. I don't think there's going to be I don't think it'll be a fixed point in time when we say we've hit this kind of milestone. But from where I sit, in my role working with all our entertainment advertising partners stay at Meta, I've already seen this tremendous amount of innovation and people really leaning into new ways of doing things. And it's there's this brilliant analogy that I've been playing with recently that if essentially, when we look back over time, history always accelerates innovation. And if you think right back to something like, the Great Depression of the 1930s, we saw that was a major catalyst for loads of innovation in the movie industry. So that, out of necessity, we saw the introduction of things like soft drinks, and popcorn in the foyer, and then the introduction of, the B-movie and animated cartoons, and all that really was designed out of this necessity where they had to do it, they had to get people to spend longer in cinema and spend more money, and it kind of worked. And I kind of feel right now, with the state of the pandemic and the way the things are, that it's kind of no different. And I think it's partners and clients who can really embrace this change and really think about new ways to reach and entertain audiences, in this new world that we find ourselves in, I think are going to be the ones that really thrive. And interestingly, music and audio are certainly kind of industries that we've seen really lean into that so far. And it's amazing how they're really trailblazing, in some cases for a lot of the rest of the industry in terms of the technologies and the experiences that they're already creating with us.
So it sounds like things are only going to accelerate.
I think so, from here on in.
Exciting times.
Yeah, very much so.
Nick, thank you very much. That's been fascinating. Really appreciate you coming and talking about that.
No worries. Thank you.
Watch this space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cheers.